must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
There is now clear evidence that the resumption of alcohol sales has resulted in substantial pressure being put on hospitals, including trauma and ICU units, due to motor vehicle accidents, violence, as well as related trauma that are alcohol-induced.
It's absolute chaos. I have had 3 deaths in the space of less than 2 hours. The third was the most shocking. I just found out that the lady is pregnant. All respiratory issues, came in shortness of breath. The place is packed like crazy. We don't even have any oxygen ports to put the patients on.
The life must go on like normal, you see. I was positive and I isolate myself at home. So nothing was wrong with me.
No, I'm not afraid because I cover me every day under the blood of the Lord, you understand? So I'm safe, so I'm not scared because if I die and I know where I'm going to.
It is easier to protect your loved ones and everyone else by going to isolation and quarantine to protect yourself and the family. But in this environment, when you probably are sharing the room, the bed with all others, it becomes difficult. You end up infecting them. So that's why we are saying that we have got hotels where we take you.
My mom tested positive, so she had to isolate. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment. So for her to isolate, all of us has to stay in one room. You see, so we couldn't get in contact. And there's kids around, so it's difficult.
It's winter in South Africa. The days are short, barely time to bury the dead. A 22-year-old man is mourned in Soweto. The funeral directors here say it feels like the height of the AIDS epidemic. Except when they bury the dead now, the number of mourners is restricted. The diggers must do what humans once did. And there's worse to come.
We are preparing over 1.5 million grave sites, and it's an uncomfortable discussion, you know, as a medical practitioner, but it's reality that we need to deal with.
The infection has yet to reach its peak here, but the second wave is already underway. It's an economic crisis spawned by the health crisis, and both are a matter of life and death. Long queues for food. Bare hands aren't enough to carry what they need.
No money, no pay, no food. You see, it's like we are surviving like an animal. If there is no food, people are going to die.
The fear is that some people who survived the virus might be killed by the lockdown. Covid-19 has exposed inequalities everywhere, but this is the most unequal society.
We have many, many vulnerable communities in South Africa, and we just cut their lifelines. So I think that is should have been an important consideration in deciding on the nature of the lockdown.
It's the vast townships where social distancing is difficult that there's most concern. Khayelitsha near Cape Town is where the country's first COVID-19 case was confirmed, and it's here that a field hospital has opened in case the health system is overwhelmed. But there's another reason why South Africa is so vulnerable. It's high rates of HIV and TB. There's a health infrastructure that neighbouring countries don't have, but it might not be enough.
The HIV struggle has come in to help them to launch one of the most heroic and best responses, but South Africa is in pain, is struggling. It's a very unequal society.
Many countries are facing this challenge, but in South Africa, any misstep is likely to hit harder as its greatest challenges combine.
I have so much in store for you in the different countries I have prepared for you this afternoon. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and a very warm welcome to you. And we start with some news coming from Nigeria. And Fahim Saleh, the founder of Go-Kada, one of Nigeria's ride-hailing motorcycle services, has been found murdered in Manhattan apartment by the police in the U.S. city of New York. The body was reportedly found by his sister on Tuesday. A New York Police Department spokesperson said the body had been decapitated and dismembered, while an electric saw was found in the vicinity. The reaction of the tech world in Nigeria has been one of shock at his companies broke the news. As his company broke the news of his death on its Twitter page. And then we still stay with Nigeria, where former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan has been appointed as special envoy for Mali to try to resolve the political crisis in the country. He is expected to bring together key parties, including President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, opposition leaders, civil society, as well as religious organizations for a dialogue on the crisis. Mr. Jonathan's appointment was announced by Jean-Claude Cassi-Bro, head of the Western African Economic Bloc, ECOWAS. Mali has been rocked by protests in the recent past, with demonstrators demanding for President Keïta to step aside over a raft of issues, including disputed elections. And then we go to Somalia, where a plane carrying food aid from Djibouti crashed at an airport in Beledweyne, central Somalia on Tuesday. The crew is safe and no one on ground was injured, according to a statement by the U.S. Embassy in Somalia. It is said that the flight was part of efforts to provide vitally important food aid to Somalis, and Aviation Safety Network, which monitors aircraft accidents, posted a photo showing parts of the Kenyan plane engulfed in flames. And then we go to Sudan, where the signing of a peace deal between the Sudanese government and the rebel coalition has been delayed until further notice. The event had been scheduled for Tuesday, and now the postponement comes after attacks in the North Darfur at a settlement for internally displaced people that left 9 people dead and 16 others wounded. Clashes between security forces and groups protesting the violence had earlier led to a declaration of a state of emergency in the region. Rebel groups participating in the peace talks blamed the transitional government and the state's authorities for failing to deal with militias in the region, and that is according to some media reports from Sudan. And then we go to South Africa, and South Africa's Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy, Gwede Mantashe, and his wife have tested positive for coronavirus. The couple were in isolation and the minister would continue to work from home. A statement from the cabinet has said this was Mr. Mantashe's third round of tests since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. South Africa has confirmed over 287,000 coronavirus cases, and that is according to the World Health Organization, the highest in the continent. And we go to Zambia, where Zambia's President Edgar Lungu has denied accusations he was bankrolling a Rwandan rebel group whose spokesman is facing trials for attacks in Rwanda in 2018 that left scores dead. The former spokesman, Kaliste Nsambimana, told a Rwandan High Court on Monday that President Lungu had promised his National Liberation Front some $1 million to help topple the Rwandan government, the AFP news agency is now reporting. He said President Lungu had made a down payment of $150,000 to support the rebel attacks. The French agency has reported now President Lungu's spokesman said the allegations were false and should be treated with the contempt they deserve. And Ms. Tansabimana is facing 17 charges, Rwanda's news website, The New Times, have reported. And we move to Egypt, where a prominent Egyptian journalist has died of COVID-19. His daughter has said Mohamed Munir was arrested last month after appearing on the Qatari channel Al Jazeera, which is banned by the Egyptian government. He was charged with joining a terrorist group, spreading false news, and misusing social media, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists, which said that Munir had died in isolation ward on Monday after falling sick. Egypt is ranked 166 out of 180 countries for press freedoms by Reporters Without Borders, which describes the country as one of the worst, biggest jailers of journalists. And then we go back to Sudan, where the joint United Nations and Africa Union mission in Darfur on Tuesday condemned violent incidents in North Darfur state, which left 9 dead and 20 others injured, according to the peacekeeping mission. It is regrettable that these incidents have taken place while the transitional government of Sudan and the armed movements are close to concluding negotiations expected to bring peace and stability to the Darfur region and the whole of Sudan. That is what a part of the statement read. Now, Darfur has long been plagued by poor security and armed groups. In 2003, a deadly ethnic conflict broke out in Darfur between African minority rebels and forces backed by the government of ex-President Omar al-Bashir, who was ousted in April 2019. Bashir wanted by the Hague-based International Court over charges of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity in Darfur. And then we go to Mali, where one of detained Mali protest leaders, freed after 3 days of unrest, has denounced his arrest, calling it an assassination attempt. He said he was kidnapped and slept 2 days in an unsanitary washroom with no food, no contact, and total isolation. Malian authorities on Monday freed political opponents whom security forces had detained following recent violent protests against the president in an apparent bid to calm seething tensions in the country. The protest leader reiterated that at this time he was more than determined because the support of the people had convinced him that he is on the right track, but still remain in a peaceful and Republican spirit. And still staying with Mali, and pressure from protesters has pushed the son of Malian President Boubacar Keïta to resign from his position as chair of the Parliament's Defense Committee. On Monday, Keïta's son, Karim Keïta, issued a statement announcing his resignation, and this is what part of his statement read. For my part, I put Mali above all else. No sacrifice is too great for Mali. I don't want to be an argument for people in need of a program or a hindrance to the dialogue between Malians. And now the president has made other concessions in a bid to restore calm to the capital, Bamako, after several large anti-government protests, the most recent on Friday. And then we head back to Nigeria, where Nigerian members of parliament have resolved to investigate the purported voluntary resignation of 365 military officers from the Nigerian army. The decision to probe the resignation followed the adoption of a motion of matters of urgent public importance moved on Tuesday by Chief Whip of the House, Mohammed Monguno, and 3 others. According to Monguno, the soldiers tendered their resignation due to alleged embezzlement of allowances and inferior military hardwares. Monguno, in his motion, linked the recent exposure by Lance Corporal Martins Idak Payne to the mass resignation. Now, if you recall, 356 soldiers fighting the Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria's northeast recently wrote the country's chief of army staff to Korbotai, seeking a voluntary retirement over the loss of interest. And now, the soldiers, in a letter with reference, reference number, I don't have the reference number here, they quoted harmonized terms and conditions of service to the soldiers, asked for approval to leave the Nigerian army due to low morale. So I think that is a very dangerous move there in Nigeria. If soldiers right now are even resigning from the National Army of Nigeria there, a country that is already going through a lot in terms of its security, and then we have a problem. And then we move to Ivory Coast, where Ivorians on Tuesday paid tribute to Ivory Coast Prime Minister Amadou Gon Coulibaly, who died last week, only 3 months before he was due to be the ruling party's presidential candidate. President Alassane Ouattara, who had considered Coulibaly his heir apparent, presided over the ceremony held at the presidential palace in the capital Abidjan. He was joined by Senegal's President Macky Sall. And then we head to Ethiopia, where new images captured in the last week by the European Space Agency's Sentinel-1 satellite suggest that Ethiopia may have started filling its massive Nile River dam as tensions over the project continue. Ethiopia denied the assertion, but maintains the country's position that it is still on track to begin the multi-year process of filling the dam later this month. The images set off a fury of speculation, with Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan deadlocked in the talks over the dam's future. And we head back, I think, to Malawi. We've not been to Malawi. We were at, I've gotten some news there from Mali, but now we go to Malawi. And police in Malawi have arrested a bodyguard of former President Peter Mutharika for allegedly helping him avoid a nearly $7 million in import duties. Mutharika has denied knowledge of the scheme, which saw cement for construction of his private property imported duty-free. Norman Chisale is one of several people whom police arrested on Tuesday for alleged involvement in the cement importation deal. Police spokesperson James Kadanzera confirmed the arrest, but refused further comment to avoid jeopardizing the investigations. Kadanzera, however, said besides Chisale, police are interrogating several other people on the same matter. And then we move to Libya, where Libya's eastern-based parliament approved a motion authorizing neighboring Egypt to directly intervene militarily in the country's war if needed to counter Turkey's support for the international recognized government of national accord. The body in Tobruk backs renegade commander Khalifa Haftar, who fought a 14-month and ultimately unsuccessful campaign to seize Libya's capital Tripoli from the GNA. After months of impasse, Turkish military support helped the GNA to turn the tide of the conflict in recent weeks and drive Haftar's Libyan National Army, backed by Egypt and the United Arab Emirates, and also Russia, from Libya's northwest region there. And then we go back to Sudan, where I think the signing of peace deal between the Sudanese government and the rebel coalition has been delayed. I think we looked at that, and also in South Africa. So that is the latest from Africa this afternoon. So a couple of things here that perhaps we need to talk about, and that is the story, of course, coming from Ethiopia. We know the Grand Renaissance Dam there that right now, yesterday we were talking about it, and the satellite images that had shown that Ethiopia had started filling this dam, and, Egypt has responded there, because the latest, they had a meeting and they're not able to agree there. And so, yes, there are images that have shown that Ethiopia has started filling up this dam, and Ethiopia has come out and said, no, they have not done that. But I'll not get too much into that conversation, because this is a show that Dr. Matanga will be looking at later on in the evening, and she'll be looking at some of the treaties that had been made, during the colonial era that gives Egypt, Egypt always feels as if they have a right over the Nile River. But this is because of some of the treaties that were made and have been in place, of course, that spells out the use of the resource that is the Nile River. So I'll not get too much into the details of that. Later on in the evening, President Matanga shall be looking at that. But now something that I'd like for us to look, one of the news here that we are looking at this afternoon is from Mali. It's very interesting, because we were looking on Monday, is it on Monday, also on Sunday, we were looking at, the new cabinet of the new president for Malawi, and the manner in which he had appointed some of these people. He brought in relatives. We saw a husband and a wife both holding different, cabinet positions in the government. We saw a brother and a sister also given different, dockets in the same government. We also saw somebody and their cousin together. And that is something that raised a lot of criticism because people had expected a different kind of leadership model there from the new president, and so we see the same thing here in Mali. And I was shocked to learn that President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, who right now is facing a lot of protests in Mali there, the Malians are calling for him to resign of course, an election that was disputed that happened earlier in the year in March. And I was shocked to learn that his son was chairing, the Parliament's Defense Committee. And this is a very important committee, as you would understand. And so the son decided to resign. So I don't know what this would mean, for President Boubacar Keïta, who right now seems to be under a lot of siege there. But how is it that he thought it was a good idea to have his son head this very important committee? I mean, things like this are the things that push people to the edge. Even for Malawian president, I think soon and very soon, if he has not gotten the message straight up yet, that the people of Malawi will not agree to such appointments based on nepotism. So these are just some of the things also that are causing Keïta a lot of problems here in Mali. And to learn that his son was chairing this very important, Parliament's Defense Committee, I was very astounded. So now the son has decided to step down, and perhaps I don't know if his father should follow suit. So this part of the letter that Karim Keïta, that is the son of, the President Ibrahim Keïta, this is what he said. That for my part, I put Mali above all else, all right? A lesson perhaps President Keïta should learn. And no sacrifice is too great for Mali. I don't want to be an argument for people in need of a program or a hindrance to dialogue between Malawians. I think that is a very patriotic approach, from the son of Boubacar Keïta here. It's very, because sometimes that is what we lack. A lot of leadership here in Africa. You find that people insist staying in power, even when the people are saying, we've had enough of you. Can you now just leave and see if we can find somebody else who can come and serve us? So this is the son of Boubacar Keïta, who is saying, you know what, I don't want to stand in the way of Malawians. I hear, not Malawians, but Malians. I hear what they're saying. And if my position here might be a hindrance to a dialogue between Malians, I don't know why I'm confusing Malians and Malawians, between Malians, then I don't want to be the reason why Malians cannot come together. So he has stepped aside, and that's very interesting. And we've seen the president himself trying to make some concessions. There's some opposition members that had been arrested a couple of days ago. He released them from jail just a few days ago, just trying to appease the protesters. Also, the judges who oversaw remember the 30 members of parliament whose wins were overturned by the Constitutional Court. So he's gone and fired all these judges who presided all this in the Constitutional Court and put others in place and saying perhaps they'll relook at these cases. So it's a lot that has been happening in Mali there. So I'm just hoping perhaps, President Keïta might borrow that move from his son and put the country forward first, the country above anything else, and then that way perhaps they can find a solution for the protest and the things that he can pay attention, to some of these issues that Malians have been raising, and the reason why they found it necessary to go out there in the streets and protest. When you look at the bigger picture, which is the country, you're able to see things very clearly. But when you're looking from the specks of your own ego and your personal interest, sometimes we lose the bigger picture and we lose the point. Now, something else that we must talk about. Nigeria, members of parliament. I don't know why every day we have to find a very, disturbing stories coming from Nigeria. But now Nigeria's members of parliament have resolved to investigate the purported voluntary resignation of 365 military officers from the Nigerian army. First of all, this should worry the government of President Buhari. owing to the situation of the insecurity in Nigeria and understanding how important the army is in fighting the insurgents of Boko Haram there, this will be the wrong time for any army official to resign. And these people are not the army officials. They come from a specific place, that Boko Haram has infested, and they've been trying to fight Boko Haram. So they have resigned 365 military officials. All right, so let's just look at the story and see what really is happening from Nigeria. The decision to probe the resignation followed the adoption of a motion of matters of urgent public importance on Tuesday by the chief whip of the House and Mohamed Mungono and 3 others. So the chief whip of the House, Mr. Mungono, right? So according to Mungono, the soldiers tendered their resignation due to alleged embezzlement of allowances and inferior military hardware. Because what we've learned for the war of Boko Haram is that Boko Haram has the most sophisticated, hardware that only, few countries even have in terms of the itinerary there. So it appears that the military in Nigeria, they don't have the best. They're saying the hardware is inferior, so they cannot really fight Boko Haram there. So that brings us to the question, who is, funding and equipping Boko Haram? Because this is something that the Nigerian government and intelligence in Nigeria should be able to know. Who is this that is funding Boko Haram with this very sophisticated hardware that now even army officials in Nigeria feel that they cannot fight against the Boko Haram because they're better equipped, and what Nigerian army have is inferior military hardware, which I think is such a shame. A whole terrorist group outdoing a whole military of a country. If I lived in Nigeria, I tell you, I'll be so worried, because this is not something you want to hear, that the army, the work of the army is to protect the borders of a country against any kind of aggression and the life of the people in that country, against any kind of threat. So Boko Haram is inside Nigeria. And the army inside Nigeria, some of them are saying, oh no, these are people we can't fight. Nigerians, listen, you are on your own, because Boko Haram has very sophisticated military hardware, and what we have as the Nigerian army is quite inferior compared with what the enemy has. I will not even sleep at night, let me tell you something, because it's not good. So now, also another issue, I think, these army officials, why are they resigning now? And that is the probe that has been happening now, and is happening in the Senate there. So outside of the issues of allowances, because they go to very hardship places, Boko Haram, fighting Boko Haram has not been a joke. We have seen the government of Nigeria has been unable to really fight and get rid of Boko Haram. So the people that are put there to fight the army, there's a part of, the allowances that they're given for that. And apparently they're not even given, it goes to a few pockets there through corruption. And so, there is an expose that happened there by another army official that really that have brought all this to the fore about the mass resignation. Now, if you recall, about 356 soldiers fighting the Boko Haram insurgency in Nigeria's northeast recently wrote to the country's chief of army staff, Tukur Burati, seeking voluntary retirement over loss of interest. They're saying, we don't have the passion anymore. We are not interested anymore. Guarding this country is not something that we want to do anymore. And that is very, very serious. If President Buhari, who is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Nigeria, sir, if you don't take this very seriously, this is the army that makes you sleep very well at the palace. I don't know what you call the official residence of the presidents there in Nigeria. But these are the people that makes Buhari go to sleep and have a sound sleep without worrying, because he knows the army is in control of the country as a commander-in-chief of Nigeria. So if these people are quite dispassionate, as we see, if the same army that are protecting your life, President, and the lives of other Nigerians there, they're saying they've lost interest then we have a problem. I don't know how you go at night and sleep. As the commander-in-chief of the armed forces there in Nigeria, I mean, insecurity in Nigeria, this is something we cover here every day. Tell me when we never talked about Nigeria and its insecurity there. And the chief, the commander-in-chief of Nigeria seems to be quite much at ease. The information comes out, stories comes out involving even the army and the police recruitment, all that are the security agencies in that country. But Buhari has not been very keen on addressing this matter. So if I was Buhari, like I said, I will not even sleep at night. I will be so worried because I don't know these army officials that are resigning, the amount of intelligence they have. There are a few of them that are sympathetic to Boko Haram. Are they all, these are things that should bother the security apparatus there in Nigeria. So you see a whole army. This is a huge number of people, and I'm sure these are top officials there in the Nigerian army coming out and saying they've lost interest in serving in the Nigerian army because they don't feel supported. They don't feel like the government is committed in the war against terrorism. The monies that they're supposed to be given in terms of their allowances, those they don't even get that because it disappears through corruption. And on top of that, they're saying that a Nigerian army has inferior military hardware compared to Boko Haram. That is a serious problem there, President Buhari. That is something you have to look at, please, for the sake of Nigerians and the rest of us, because Boko Haram is not only affecting Nigeria. Boko Haram has gotten a hold and a footing in other African countries and now is spreading insecurity like wildfire. And before you know it, they will be linking up with Al-Shabaab in the East African region and the whole place will blow up. So we don't want that to happen. So Boko Haram has to be brought into control. But now if the army that is supposed to be fighting it is saying they've lost interest, they're not interested anymore. They've lost passion to fight, to serve the country, to protect the country, to protect its people. And Commander-in-Chief is just sleeping and having a good time there in the State House or Palace, I don't know what you call it. We have a problem, all right? All right, so what else? Oh yeah, this story from Malawi, we have to talk about it, and I wish Dr. Matanga was here, but I think I'll bring it up later on the other show. And so we've seen our president, the new president of Malawi, and now he's going, Lazarus Chakwera, he's going after the former president, and he went after the former president Peter Mutharika, and now the police have arrested bodyguard of former president Peter Mutharika, and for allegedly helping him avoid $7 million US dollars in import duties. So President Mutharika, when he was president, he used his power to import cement. I don't know if Malawians don't produce cement, because I think as a president of a country, you would be the first one to go and promote even the local industries there and the local products. So the president, imported cement from outside Malawi, and he evaded like a $7 million US dollars worth of import duties. What kind of cement was this that he had to pay a whole $7 million US dollars import duty, and he evaded that? And so now the government is after the new government of Lazarus Chakwera is after these officials. And of course, President Mutharika has come out and said this is political prosecution. They don't agree with this. And I think we talked about this the other day when we were looking at this story from Malawi. And Dr. Matanga was proposing that perhaps this witch hunting and things like this is what makes a lot of leaders in Africa refuse to leave power, because if you continue going after them, then they'll be like that. I'd rather just stay here, die here as a president, and instead of me resigning or leaving power, and then I'll face this kinds of witch hunt and prosecution. But if there is evidence that this person did this, then there's no reason why he should not be prosecuted. He should follow the due course of the law. I think should follow suit, and I think that is something that a conversation that we shall be having with Doctor, but much later. later. So thank you so much. I think that's all I had for us today. Hopefully we can meet here tomorrow, but make a date with the doctor later in the evening, 8 p.m. East African time, for another show. But for me this afternoon, thank you so much. We can meet here. Let's meet here tomorrow for another edition of Diaspora Dispatches and look at other news making headlines across the continent. My name is Miriam Ogutu. A very good afternoon to you.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.